started right now with our plenary panel. I'm using my theater voice for a reason. I would like for you all to have a seat. Thank you very much. And let's fill in the front here. Don't be shy. Since you're here and all, move on up. Let's be friends. So, good afternoon. It is my pleasure to be with you today. My name is Toya Lillard. My pronouns are she, her. I am many things. I'm the co-chair of the Task Force on Equity and Inclusion for the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable. I'm a proud board member. I'm also interim executive director at 651 Arts. I am a Black woman and someone who has spent their entire adult life working in this field. Someone who spent their entire adult life serving in this field. So it is my great pleasure and honor to moderate this panel today about changing the face of executive leadership in the arts. For those of us who have been working in this field for all of our adult lives, we know that there's lots of changes that have happened and lots of change that needs to still happen, yeah? Many of us have been instrumental in speaking up and out about the changes that need to happen. Some of us to our detriment. Some of us to our detriment. And so today we're going to meet some amazing folks who have also served in this field and who are instrumental in changing the face of executive leadership. We're going to invite you to consider your role in the changes that we see, are seeing, and have yet to see. And together, we're going to think about a different way forward, yeah? But first, I want to take a moment to fully introduce our panel. My plan was to just say a couple of words, a couple of sentences from the Bible, but no, it's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. Why? Because this panel is about changing the face of executive leadership in the arts. And so you will hear every word of each of these. Because they deserve. You may take out your notepad and take notes as you like. Okay? But I'm going to read every word because you should hear and absorb these biographies. Coco Killingsworth. Woo! That's right. As Vice President, Creative Social Impact, Coco Killingsworth leads BAM's education, community engagement, and expansive programming, as well as acted as co-president, where she helped oversee and reopen the institution during its search for new leadership. Killingsworth joined BAM's executive team in December of 2016. And we know how hard of a month that was. Just in case you forgot. Previously, she served as the Deputy Director and Director of Programs for Global Kids, Inc., where she managed school-based and after-school global education programs in 35 New York City public schools and started a small public high school, the High School of Global Citizenship in Brooklyn's Prospect Heights. Killingsworth was a board member and co-chair of board for the Sadie Nash Leadership Project, a program for young women and gender-expansive youth, where she also designed the Core Leadership Seminar. She was a Charles H. Revson Fellow at Columbia University in 2010 through 11, as well as a principal dancer at the Ase Dance Theater Collective, a Brooklyn-based dance company. Did you know? Did you know? Killingsworth holds a BA in History and African Studies from UCLA and an MA in Education from Harvard University. Coco Killingsworth. Every word. Tracy Lester joined the Center for Fiction. After a 25-year career in the nonprofit sector, most recently, she was executive director of National Dance Institute, NDI, an arts education organization founded by the legendary dancer Jacques D'Amboise, in the belief that every child should have access to learning in and through the arts. Prior to NDI, she held other leadership roles, most notably as the executive director of Reach Out and Read of Greater New York, an early literacy school readiness program. Tracy has been recognized by the Manhattan Borough President as a cultural leader in New York City, but we already knew that. She is the recipient of the American Association of University Women's Selected Professions Fellowship, the National Association of Health Services Executive Community Service Award, and was named the Grio's 100 list as an African American history maker and industry leader in the field of education. She's also a member of the Greater New York Association of Fundraising Professionals and the American Society for Public Administrators, Pi Alpha Alpha Honor Society. Tracy Lester. Shanta Tatake is an Aaron Kratz, Chief Artistic Officer at Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. Prior to Lincoln Center, the first sentence. I love your energy. Let's keep it up. Let's give folks their flowers while they're here sitting in front of you, yeah? Prior to Lincoln Center, she held the position of Associate Artistic Director and Director of Artistic Programs at the Public Theater, overseeing the growth and development of public works, mobile units, Under the Radar, Joe's Pub, the Shakespeare Initiative, and Public Forum. Previously, she spent 10 years as the director of Joe's Pub, the intimate cabaret venue which hosts over 700 shows annually, and is consistently hailed as one of New York City's most prestigious venues for both emerging and established artists. In addition, Ms. Thake is the co-director of Global Fest, North America's world music festival and nonprofit organization whose mission is to foster cultural exchange and to increase the presence of world music in diverse communities nationwide. And in this role, received the William Dawson Award for Programmatic Excellence. Thake has served as the co-chair of the Association of Performing Arts Professionals, APAC, conference in 2019 and 2020. Ms. Thake received a BA in theater as well as a degree in management from Indiana University and currently lives in Brooklyn. Zareta Ricks is a native New Yorker. A rarity. And has deep knowledge of and passion for public education and its ability to provide opportunities for young people to realize their potential and actualize their dreams. Her relentless commitment to creating environments that provide youth with educational equity, meaningful opportunities, and intentional experiences has impacted the lives of thousands of students across the city. Zareta comes to opening act from Change for Kids, where she served as the Senior Director of Programs and Innovation, responsible for leading the development, implementation, and evaluation for their full portfolio of programs. During her tenure, Zareta served in various leadership roles and was a key contributor to the organization's unprecedented growth and deepening of its capacity to deliver exemplary programs with an innovative approach. Under her direct leadership, programs expanded to include Graduating to Greatness, a program to prepare students for middle school, and a corporate responsibility volunteer model to create symbiotic partnerships between their partner schools and corporations throughout New York City. Having attended public school all of her life, Zareta vividly remembers the joy of being introduced to arts education while in elementary school. When she is not trailblazing in the youth development path, Zareta loves spending time with her 3 children and using them as prototypes for all of them. Zareta studied organizational management at Mercy College in New York City, holds a professional certificate in nonprofit executive leadership and management from Fordham University, and is a member of the American Express Leadership Academy cohort for emerging nonprofit leaders. Give it up for the panel. So I have the great honor and pleasure of asking our panel some questions related to this theme of making power moves, changing the face of executive leadership in the arts. And as someone who has run a couple of nonprofits now and written a lot of grants, I was thinking, wow, wouldn't it be fun for us to approach this as if we were writing a grant? The who, what, when, where, why, how? Who, what, when, where, who, what, when, where, why, how? Of it all. So my questions are in that spirit of the who, what, when, where, why, how. And I, being a nerd with a capital N, I have my notebooks here. And I am going to invite you to think about your own who, what, when, where, why, how of your journey. My first question is about the who. We are often asked as leaders, who are the people that were instrumental in your journey? Who were your mentors? Many of us have mentors with notable names that you would recognize. I want to invite the panel to think about the unsung heroes of your life. The folks who may not have bold names, the folks who may not have been named into any other space before. Who are the people who are instrumental to and in your leadership journey? Who would like to start? Why don't we start with Zareta?
I was hoping she didn't say that. Well, that's a loaded question. And so, good afternoon, everyone. I was reflecting on it as I was coming into the city, and there's one person that just came to the forefront of my mind, and it's a person that I very, very rarely talk about her. My grandmother passed away a couple of years ago, and as you know, grandchildren, our memories when we were younger were not fond, right? Because she was very stern. But when I look at the woman that I am now and the woman that I am modeling before my daughter, and I look at my mom, my grandmother is an unsung hero in our family because she was unapologetically woman, right? Unapologetically the matriarch of the family, excuse me. And her presence just demanded respect, right? So as a little girl, she lived in Jamaica, Queens, and she had a garden in her backyard, and I will never forget this. I had to be around 6 or 7 years old. And her name was Zenobia. I'm Zareta. My daughter's name is Zyla. We are bringing the Z's back. And I remember her saying to me, now you can go out in the backyard, don't eat the strawberries. They're not ready. What do? I go in the backyard, look up to the window, she can't see me. I'm gonna eat these strawberries. I go back upstairs, she says, come here. Yes, Grandma. Were you in those strawberries? Open your mouth and let me see your teeth. And of course, the teeth told it all. And the reason why she's one of my unsung heroes is because from that moment, what my grandmother said to me was, she said, people lie until they are forced to tell the truth. And young people that don't obey tend to grow up to be adults that don't obey. And honesty, if you're honest with me, if you're honest with people, even when you make a mistake intentionally, even when you don't listen to Grandma, I'm willing to work with you. Because my job is not to only discipline you, but to give you the courage to be honest. Right. I will never forget that conversation. And I stood there, and a little tear started rolling down my face. And she said, so I'm gonna give you another opportunity to be honest with me. She made me go back downstairs. And I came back upstairs, she was in the kitchen. She said, "Were you in those strawberries?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Didn't I tell you not to eat those strawberries?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Because you're so cute, I'm not gonna punish you." But she said that, and I remember her talking to my mom about it. She said, "You don't ever want her to think that she won't get a second chance." And so my grandmother, and I have many unsung heroes, but I always think about that. So every time I'm forced to compromise the truth, especially in this space, I remember that. Just be honest, right? It might not necessarily be perceived, right? Strawberries all over my teeth, that wasn't cute, right? But the experience of it to this day resonates with me. So I always live from a place of truth is not always pretty, but it's necessary for you to get the wisdom that you need so that you can not only share that wisdom, but live from a place where you're not afraid. And so that's my story. I love my grandmother.
I forgot that I was with educators and storytellers. I'm gonna spend my whole time up here crying. The first person that always comes to mind for me is my aunt, who, for a couple of reasons, both practical and all of the ways that she was such a role model to me. But she moved to Wisconsin, where I had grown up, and went to school for dance at the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point, coming from Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, which is where my mother was born and raised, and they were all, so she came to Wisconsin to study where my mom was living, and we were living in so I grew up with her around all the time. My grandmother moved also, and so we had this little commune of Indians in the middle of Wisconsin. And she went to dance and then moved to New York and got a job at Alvin Ailey as Judith Jamison's assistant. And so I grew up, so I was 10 years old when she got that job. She still works at Ailey. She is Robert Battle's assistant and continues to work with Ms. Jamison. And so I grew up really coming to New York and having, of course, like everyone, my mind entirely blown by Alvin Ailey. From the moment we came into that space, and not just on stage, but backstage, seeing what that administration office looked like, and hanging out with Pam, the accountant, and really feeling like this was a family. And I don't think I definitely would not have articulated at the time, but one, it was my first experience of kind of high art, and it was living in a Black experience, and then having Judith Jamison as the head of this organization, really for me, made it sort of an unquestioned truth that Black women, women of color could be in those roles, should be in those roles, and I could always visualize that. And I think as I've moved through the world since I was been 10, I've been shocked to see how hard that is to actually accomplish, and how few people I see have seen along my own journey that have been in that position, like Ms. Jamison, have been holding it down. And I think moving to New York, I got a job at the Public Theater for George C. Wolfe, and I was his assistant. So I literally followed almost exactly the footsteps of my aunt. And I was the assistant in his, and I was just reading all these great articles that somebody posted on Facebook of George C. Wolfe's Public Theater. And it's basically, it's insane, because it's 30 years ago. All of these same headlines of George C. Wolfe's vision of inclusivity and these incredible seasons, and and working at George Wolfe's Public Theater every day was about who's in the room, who's not in the room, and it wasn't about diversity, equity, inclusion. It was just about how are we making a thing, who's in it, how are we making sure that our crew isn't an all-white crew? How do we make sure that the story isn't an all-white story? And that was a joyous, beautiful conversation. It was never a hard conversation. It was just the thing that everybody carried with them into every space, knowing that we would get to the best place. And so I think that's a long way of saying that my aunt brought me into all of the rooms that I'm in right now. And so her name is Sadi. I'm sure many of you know her if you work in dance, because every time I show up in a room with dancers, they're like, Sadi? So it continues to pay dividends to me today.
So, is this on?
Yes.
I think the person I would name is my mother. Her name was Melba Lester, like Peach Melba. And some of you know this, but my mother passed away right during the pandemic. And we've spent the last year, my sister and I, going through everything. And unfortunately, before my mother passed away, my father passed away. So it's been a tough 2 years. But we've been going through all the family records, and we found so much about my mother that we didn't know, but now really help us to understand sort of the kind of person that she was. And she wasn't a dancer. She didn't particularly like music. But she made sure that we were in every dance class, in every piano recital, she was there at every performance, and we were in every show. And she changed her life so that she could be present for us all the time. I remember she went back to school while I was in school to get an associate's degree so she could be a para at the school where I was going to school, because there were few Black children in that setting and even less educators. So I just remember my mother being present for me, and that's something I try to mirror for my own daughter, because as we know as parents, we're the ones, parents as teachers, parents as role models, and so I show up for my child the way that my mother showed up, and so my mother is my role model.
I'm glad I got to go last on this one, because I got very inspired by, I think I was going to answer this question very different when we first talked about it, but without a doubt, the person in my life is also my grandmother, who passed away 2 summers ago at 103. She was originally from Barbados, but really grew up in the Bronx. And grew up in the Bronx, and was the most independent, fierce, and adorable New Yorker you've ever met in your life. And just, when my grandfather passed away when I was 2, she moved to California. I'm from Oakland, California. You can dig that up too, thank you very much. And so she moved out there to be with my mom and my uncle who were there. And after my grandfather had passed away, and so what I knew of my grandmother was I only ever had one grandparent. She was everything. I never wanted for any other grandparent. I was never, searching for, and I didn't know her ever with a partner or a husband, because she was like, apparently when my grandfather passed, the men at the church came to say, I'll be next. And she's like, no, I did that. I did the husband thing. I'm gonna go on and go have this next phase of my life. So she had a whole other life out in California, but we would always come back to New York, and we would always go to shows. We would always see art. She had bought my mom and I and her season tickets to the San Francisco Ballet. So I grew up not just seeing the arts and being in it, but being comfortable. It never occurred to me with my mother, my grandmother, and I at the San Francisco Ballet that we were probably the only Black people in the audience at that time. It didn't faze me. I didn't feel like an honored guest that should be so welcome. How did you get here? She just never let me feel that way. And so that's how I move in the world now. Many years later, I know that there is that assumption that I should feel very honored. You're so lucky to do the things you're doing, but I feel very present in myself in those spaces because of her. I feel, quite frankly, everybody else is lucky that I'm in that space. And that's very much her. And I do want to share, we would come back, and one hilarious story. I say my grandmother was adorable, and my mother, who is here visiting me right now, is just accepting that she is now adorable as an older woman. She's like, I'm not sure about that, but she is. My grandmother would walk onto the subways, like quintessential New York, fast walker, and the doors would open and people would part ways for her because she was amazing, and you just wanted to, make sure she was comfortable. And her elbows would be out, and she would, kind of walk in the space like that, like ready to knock somebody over, and kind of disappointed that there wasn't a fight. So I also walk with that, like ready.
Ready for a fight.
Ready for a fight.
I'm gonna walk out here. You don't have to get ready if you stay ready.
So I do want to say her name, Elsie Cephas Phillips.
Wow. Shout out to the mothers and grandmothers and aunties that go Thank you for answering that first question so generously. I have to shout out my own auntie, Eileen Morris, without whom I wouldn't be standing here. Many of you know who she is. And very similarly, walking into rooms where she has carved out space for me. So yeah, that felt really good, thank you. My next question has to do with the what. And as you were talking, I was thinking about, my own what brought me into this work, and I always go back to what made me a feminist. And I think about my paternal grandmother, who I never talk about, because I never thought of her as being instrumental in my leadership journey, but more of a barrier. Why? And I promise I'm getting to my question, because when I was about 5 years old, one of my favorite things to do is to help her make breakfast. And this particular morning, I had gotten up, and she would get up at like 6 a.m. to make these elaborate country breakfasts with the thick bacon and and all of the things. And I just was fascinated with her methodology and technique. And so my little 5-year-old self stood there and helped her make breakfast. And she said to me, "Go wake up your brother and your cousins. They all happen to be boys." I said, "Sure, I'll go wake them up for breakfast because I've helped you make it." And so I woke them up. Breakfast is ready. I've helped grandmother prepare it. Breakfast is ready. I went to go wash my hands because even back then I was a bit of a germaphobe. And I came to the table and all the food was gone. The boys had just grabbed all the food. So I turned to my grandmother. "Can you believe that they've eaten all the food? I just went to go wash my hands. I helped you make this. There's nothing left for me." And my grandmother, Albertine, turned to me and said, "Well, I figured the girls could cook for themselves." I was 5! What? So the subtext of that was that, "Yet you helped me make breakfast for your brother and cousins, not you." And it was in that moment that, my equity, all of the things that I am today, my 5-year-old self was enraged and incensed. It was in that moment I became a feminist. And that's my what. What's yours? The what's of your leadership. The what's of your leadership, right? Because you're like, there's a whole lot. What experience or experiences have been instrumental in your leadership, in your decision to be a leader? We all have shared that we came into this work as somebody's assistant or in an office where we were in an entry-level position. You decided to be a leader. That's something. What happened? What's wrong with you? No, but what factored into that decision?
I have a very quick story about this, which was a very seminal moment in my life, which I was working at Joe's Pub. When I started working at Joe's Pub, I was like everybody's assistant. I think my title was programming coordinator, but I sort of answered the phones, I organized all the CDs, I created the database. which ended up being very useful to me later, I'll say. But I went downstairs to sound check one day, and I went with my colleague Sarah Hill, who's an incredible programmer and lives up in Albany now. And we were listening to Penny Arcade, who's downtown legend performer, and she was doing her just working through her set, and she usually has always used Joe's Pub as kind of a place to rehearse the work, so it's always like who knows what's gonna happen. And she was like no, come closer, basically. And so we just sat and listened to her practice for a little bit, and then at the end she talked to us for a little bit. And she was like, well, what are you programming? What are you doing here in this space? It's like, oh, I love what you do. I'm seeing this other thing. I'm seeing work all the time. And she was like, well, you can program this place. Like, that's not beyond your grasp. And I was like, sure, thank you so much. That's very sweet of you to say. And she's like, no, why? This is just a series of voices and decisions that are getting made, and why shouldn't those be yours? And I just was so stunned by that, and was like, yeah, and maybe that was a little like, I was maybe a little big for my britches at the time, but also it's Joe's Pub. It's not like Lincoln Center. But we were booking 800 shows a year. There was plenty of room to try out things. And as soon as I then went up to the office, I was like, hey, can I book some shows? And I was like, yeah, of course you can book shows. And it was literally just that easy. It was just trusting myself and having somebody say, you can trust yourself. And there's no difference from your taste from somebody else's taste. There's not a hierarchy of taste here. This is a space that should be available to you. And I took it. And I feel that way about everyone that I meet that's a curator or somebody on my staff, that there's gotta be space for their voice. If we say we're creating spaces for New Yorkers, we're representing the city, then I need to know what they're listening to, what they're watching, what they wanna see on stage, and we should be making space for that. That's my job now. And it's been, but it really just took somebody asking me the question.
I think what you said about the gut is really important, sort of trusting your gut, and I've been running nonprofits for a long time now, and my gut is right. And I know what I know, and I know how I feel. And when I first decided to become executive director, it wasn't in the arts and culture arena. It was in education and early literacy. And I had a number of careers, but I was a public school teacher in Brooklyn. I saw a listing for a position for an executive director, and I was like, yeah, I should be able to do that. Who are these people that have this job? So I applied, and I got it. So, trust your gut, pursue what you're interested in, go for it. I mean, sort of very basic things. Don't be constrained by other people and the messaging that you're getting or those little voices in your head. Just put them over here and go like this. Because your gut will, I think, send you in the right direction. And so I saw a position, I pursued it. I became an executive director of an early literacy program called Reach Out and Read, and I was there for a decade. And I left because it was time to go, I saw people making more money in other settings and running larger institutions, and I thought I could do that too. So I applied for the next job, and it's sort of, that's kind of like the pathway. It sounds very basic, but it's not. It's not questioning yourself, but really kind of honing in on your strengths. And if you feel that you have certain weaknesses, strengthen them. I went back to graduate school. I got another graduate degree. I'm not sure I would tell everybody to get graduate degrees anymore because you could do different things now. But focus on your strengths, follow your gut, and pursue that opportunity that you want. And you're likely to be successful because you did it. I think that people who don't won't ever know because you didn't go after the opportunity.
I think for me it was finally given my vision a focus, right? And so I was working for, I'm at Opening Act now. I've been there for a little over 2 years. Prior to that, I was at Change for Kids, dynamic organization. And we had a leadership change around my 5th year. A new executive director came on board and she called me into her office, amazing Black woman. First day, she said, "You're the first person I wanted to speak to." And I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And she said, I'm looking at the organizational charts since Change for Kids started with this new program model, which is the same year that you came on board. Every year you had a new role. What's going on? And I said, opportunities presented themselves, or I saw a need. And she said, let's go back to the year 1 opportunity. And we literally went through my 5 years at the organization. And she said, what do you want to do, when you leave from here? A couple of years from now. I was like, I don't know. She said, I don't know, it's not acceptable, Zareta, what do you want to do? I said, maybe the deputy director. She said, okay, from this moment on, you're the deputy director. Not changing your title. I'm not gonna change your title. Cannot increase your pay right now. She said, because you should be sitting, in this seat. And I started at the organization as a school manager. It was a new role, right? And so, but what I learned through that process was if an organization has to keep reimagining your role, you've outgrown that organization if you're not going to lead it. And it was really hard for me because direct service, right? So I'm like, I'm from Brooklyn. My schools are in Brooklyn. I know Brooklyn. I don't want to be so far removed from the day-to-day direct service. And she really helped me to look at that 5 years, and I hadn't been doing direct service in about 4 years. But up here I was, right? In my mind, everything that I did was from that year 1 perspective, and it was apply. So I stayed with the organization for 2 more years, and I had gotten to the point, there was another leadership change, board members, folks saying to me, apply for the role. I did not apply. Mission drift, a lot of things happened, and when I decided to transition, I got an inbox, LinkedIn, hadn't seen this person in a decade. There's an ED role. You were the first person that came to mind. I'm like, really? Okay. And I applied. And within 30 days, I got the role. And so for me, it is a couple of things. Most nonprofits are in the arts, or across the city are small nonprofits, small to medium size. If they gotta keep finding a role for you, you need to be in a leadership position. And big focus, big dreams, but I had big vision, I should say, and big dreams for what I wanted to contribute to youth education, but I had to have a focus. And I had to ask myself some really hard questions about, was I sacrificing my dreams, or was I neglecting what I was supposed to do to bring those dreams to fruition? And so I've been with Opening Act now for 2 years. I started February 2020 and the world went kaboom. It literally blew up. And so I believe that it happens at the right time. But when that door opens up, you have to walk through it. And don't be afraid, right? You're not gonna know unless you try. And if you've never done it before, no one can say that you failed. They just can say that you tried. And so.
I promise this will be the last time I go last. But I got stumped again on this question. I thought I was gonna answer it a very different way. I use the word intention a lot. A lot of my team is here today, and I preach intentionality, and I do believe in that, like really, setting forth vision or being intentional in your work, in your act, in your word. But when I think about my leadership, it's been very more instinctive, and being not necessarily just in the right place at the right time, but being in a moment and realizing this is this moment. This moment is going to be able to change things or propel things in a different way. And so for me, that feels like instinct, like something, like a spidey sense tingling, like something's happening here. And so I just echo everything that everybody said. There's been moments where I've been at an organization too long, even though I did so many different things, I realized I'm not learning anything. I haven't learned anything in a long time. And there's room for other people to do what I'm doing, and so giving that space. And that was a moment, like I said, it was like looking around and being like, holy ish, it's time to go, or having different opportunities come my way, and just the gut, the instinct being like, this is what you need to do, this is where you need to go, even though that may look good or something is coming to you. And I think just listening to that and being in the moment and being able to be intentional and have a 5-year plan, but also really being able to kind of step back within yourself and see it all happening and realize this is a moment to take a step out on, or this is a person that you should really listen to, talk to, spend time, follow up with. I mean, I think we all go through this in our work, all of us. There's so many people you see, there's people here today, I'm like, yes, we need to meet up, we need to spend time, and it's hard to do all of that, just like it's hard to see every great show in New York, right? It's hard to have all those follow-ups, but really checking that gut when you need to show up for somebody, that's also a part of leadership, and then also when you need somebody to show up for you. And that's the other thing, that when I transitioned from really the education world into the arts education world, I didn't ask myself what job I wanted. I really went through a set of questions. What is the environment? What are the people? What does the space look like? What does my week look like? And that's how I started to come to that next piece. But it was really it was the instinct more than the intention. But my staff don't take that. Still have intention.
Wow, such amazing answers. I'm gonna conflate the when and where, and you'll understand why. See what I did there? Stand with me. We had a meeting, a prep meeting, because we prepare for these things, okay? We don't just show up, wake up on a Wednesday, and just get on a panel. We talk, or Thursday, whatever. Wake up on a Wednesday is my catchphrase. It doesn't matter what day it is. Don't just wake up on a Wednesday. That's just me. So when we had our prep meeting, my when and where had to do with opportunity, yeah? So a lot of times it is assumed that when we enter into these positions that so much has been given to us. Oh, we've been given so much. We've been given the opportunity to go to college and incur debt. Given the opportunity to educate our classmates and pay the same tuition. Given the opportunity to diversify predominantly white institutions. Given the opportunity for our flesh to be equity. So I want to ask about when and where you have seized the day, the moment, the job, the role, the opportunity, where you have built the table and the seat.
And the room.
And the room. When and where have you had to, been incentivized to, felt compelled to seize opportunity for leadership?
Okay, I said I'd go first. Or I said I won't go last. I think, these were the questions that I was really returning in my brain since we met. I don't know when that was. But I think it really was, we first started talking about it in terms of getting leadership opportunities or these and it really was us that started saying, it's not just seize, but also where we save the day. And we're in this moment right now, right? I just came out of, as you said in the bio, helping BAM reopen after, a pandemic, and that being a very complicated moment where a lot of people said, you're welcome, go do this, when it was really incredibly challenging, huge personal sacrifices that I'm still trying to grapple with, and made a lot harder by people who were asking me to say thank you for the opportunity, right? So there's that, and I think, but I think that happens over and over and again, and I think all of us have incredible talents. What I'm about to say has nothing to do with any of us that are here, and what we're saying, but we're also at a moment where, again, ish is a mess. Things are broken, systems are broken, and structures are broken, and boards need to shift and change, and we're being called upon to make those changes without a lot of infrastructure investment or support, and moving at the speed of what other people want us to, not at what we want to do. And so, this is it's one of these hard moments where, like, I know we're the right ones. I know we are the ones that everybody's been waiting for, and I'm pissed that we're getting this moment, in this moment where we have to clean up, all of this mess, is the moment where our leadership gets to prevail. And the idea that it's not that we didn't, yes, we had all of this and we've risen through these times, but that was more, we were allowed to do that. And when we've been pointing out, diversity, equity, inclusion is not, this is such an old ass conversation that all of us have been so clear on for a long time. And then so now starting to move that and, help that conversation along, it's very frustrating. And so I think we are in the business of seizing these opportunities. I think we've always been equipped at that, but we're also now having to be in this business of saving the opportunities. Look at what's happening right now in the city, right? I'm reeling in a little bit, but the city is in deep challenge, right? The city is, and we have leadership talking about we need to make the city safer, bring back the tourists, arts organizations, you have to do so much, big, small, large. Here's $1, go do that.
Yeah.
So elected officials in the room. Okay, good. So, it's just a very,
They were here this morning.
yeah, but it's just a very, and this is the moment where they're very happy to see Black leadership, young leadership, female leadership, all of this change, but that investment still needs to follow up, and also to not realize we didn't just get here, right? Like, you've heard decades of experience and knowledge, and all of us showed up with suitcases full of expertise, where some of our white male counterparts had like a nice little bag. You know what I mean? But we had all of these things, so we've been here, so it's not just this moment to start listening. I don't even remember what the question was.
Do your own research, yeah? So please read the Race to Lead report. Coco is referencing actual statistical facts about the face of leadership, not just in the arts, but in the nonprofit sector, and not just in the country, but in New York City. We are in no better position than we ever were. As you know, in 2012, the Department of Cultural Affairs issued a report that noted that, or maybe it was 2014, I forget, that less than 35% of arts organizations were led by Alana folk. I would say that not much has changed. Not a whole lot has changed. So what has been said here, it has been supported by millions of dollars of research that haven't gone to our pockets because nobody, you know what I'm saying? Millions of dollars of research to support what we already know, what our lived experience here is reflecting.
I don't
The
know.
question was the when and where and seizing of opportunities where there are none, dismal, no diversity, no equity, seizing, grabbing, fighting, when, where, when.
So I'm gonna just talk. So I have a 13-year-old who said to me the other day, as we left the house at 7 a.m. to get on the subway to go to school, for me to drop her off before I could get to my office. She's like, Mom, is this job more stressful than your last job? I was like, well, why do you say that? She's like, well, you're never home. You have all these events. And I was like, yeah, there are a lot of events, I have to meet with people and stuff. And she said, well, what do you do when you get stressed? And she said, well, I cry, because it relieves the stress and it makes me feel better. She said, then I talk to my friends so they can help me figure out sort of my problems. She said, and then I stopped doing the things that make me stressed. And she said, so then she said, well, have you talked to your job? She said, because you should. She said, you should go back and say, I can only come to 2 or 3 events a week. That's right. And tell them that. Yes. And I said, okay. I said, that was, thank you so much. That was so helpful. On school. So, but it was like words of wisdom, nuggets, And so as I move through my career, I have gotten more and more intentional and focused on my own health and well-being. Space, mental space, family space, friend space, physical space, just space. And my tolerance for things is shorter. In other words, I've been around long enough, I know it, if it looks like a zebra or whatever the metaphor is it is. But, and I can sort of move past that faster than I did when I was sort of earlier in my career, and I sort of get back to the gut thing, which is, follow your instincts. The opportunity, I don't remember what the question was. The opportunities emerge, pursue them, but sometimes it may not be the opportunity for you. And I was listening to a podcast with Ava DuVernay, I think, I feel like it's Adam Grant's Live Work or something podcast. And the question was, how did you become successful? And she was like, I have this side gig, and I worked and I cultivated this side gig over the years, dance or production or editing or photography. And she said, and over time, the side gig became the dominant focus for me. And then I made the pivot. So, the thing that you're passionate about, we're all here because it's the arts. Maybe the arts is your side gig, I don't know. But there are opportunities in everything that you're doing, and you just need to sort of see them for what they are. And sometimes we get blindsided by this sort of nonsense that's like the day-to-day stuff that goes on for us, when you really need to just sort of focus on the thing that's most important for you, the thing that makes you passionate, that brings you joy, the thing that matters the most. And for each of us, it's going to be different. And as I've been in this nonprofit sector for a long time, I'm able to focus on that more easily now than I was before, because I'm allowing myself the space to do that.
Let's see. What I will say is I was able to be a leader very young, very early in my career, because nobody knew how to run Joe's Pub when the director of Joe's Pub left. And so they were like, oh, you can be interim and we'll do a search, but then the search never happened, and then there I was as the director of Joe's Pub. And so I had the opportunity to fail at a lot of things. I had an opportunity to learn. I had the opportunity to apologize, which I had not seen other leaders do. And then and we were successful. So then I had a lot of new opportunities to fail and apologize and try new things. And when, in terms of setting intentions, probably last year, somebody asked me, what is the job you want more than any other job? And, where are you working towards? And I was like, I want to run Kennedy Center or Lincoln Center. And, I thought that was like maybe a little ways down the road. But I knew like the scope of work and what they were doing and what was possible and the place within the conversation was what I was interested in. And getting out a little bit of theater also was important to me. And so I think setting that intention, but then when I started to be in the conversation, and every conversation that I've had since at Lincoln Center, what I'm taking the opportunity to do now is to not change my leadership style. Because I think, I have a very empathetic way of working, which is not, I don't think that that's the way for everybody, but I do a lot of talk around ritual. We bring everybody's voice into the room. We do a lot of retreats. We do a lot of, whiteboarding, conversations, capturing everyone's ideas. And I'm really holding that is something that has worked for me for a very long time now. And I believe that it will work at Lincoln Center. And I'm gonna keep trying it, and I think it's not the way that things worked before. And not that the way that it was working before was a negative thing. It just was very different than the way I'm showing up in spaces. And so I think what I'm just taking the opportunity to do now is really trust that I have a thing to offer. And I'm gonna do that. And I first started, I would kind of apologize. Like, this is gonna be a little hippy-dippy, everybody with me, everybody cool. Everybody, we're gonna talk about our values, we're gonna talk about our vision for the future. And I'm really like, I love it. I'm loving it. It's been so much fun. It's so much fun to do with a whole new group of people, people that I have loved and worked with for 20 years. So it's been such a gift. And so I think I'm just taking the opportunity to really lead by being myself and not trying to fit myself into a thing that I think that type of leadership needs.
I've heard a lot about you all coming into leadership positions because there was no one else to do it. Oh yes, Zareta wants to add one thing.
I just one thing, and now I see why you didn't want to go last. But talking about seizing the moment, for me as a new executive director, because again, it's only been 2 years, it's every day now, because you don't know what you don't know, right? Until it's pointed out to you, or you're having, like, for me, it's that 3 a.m. I wake up and I'm like, oh, shoot. And I've been learning now and intentional about asking my team, what am I not seeing? Because you are an expert in your space, right? So again, you have Zareta, right? Well, they call me Z, and I'm an inspirational leader. Like, everything that I do is from a place of inspiration, because I believe that change is possible. But seizing the moment for me now is with that belief, not being afraid to marry that with the fact that there are some people that don't believe, and there are some things that may not happen in my lifetime. There are some things that may not even happen within my organization. But being okay and sitting with that and still leading from a place of hope. Because the reality of it is, when you think about the funding cycle and you think about the disadvantages of leadership in this moment, which we talked about, there are a lot of advantages in that our young people, or people of color can now see people of color leading, but there are disadvantages that come along with that. And so for me, seizing the moment is also being very explicit about those disadvantages and not being afraid of coming across as the angry Black woman, right? But no, this is the reality of where we are. We have options, we have these great strategic plans and all of these things that we're looking to advance, not only arts education, but across the city, change for young people. But seizing the moment for me every day is like, I take a step back. What don't I know? Because I can get very passionate. And I'm like, yes, we're gonna go and we're gonna save the world. And you're like, maybe not today, Zareta. Maybe we'll save the world next week. But But it's also going back to the first question, being unapologetic that I believe. And I'm not going to let the current climate of our city, I am not going to let even the organization's budget, I'm not going to let anything or anyone make me not believe. I'm gonna seize this moment right now. And if my legacy is just to do X, Y, and Z, I'll focus on that. But understanding, can't do it all. I cannot do it all, so I took my cape off. I think that's when I really leaned into leadership, the day that I took the cape off and said, I don't have to fly, I can walk. And you know, some folks will actually run ahead of me if you have the right team, right? And I'm gonna be like, yes, go, you can do it. Well, I'm panting and I'm out of breath.
Thank you for that. We are hope dealers. We are hope dealers. A part of leadership is having hope to deal. Yeah? So asking yourself if you have enough within you, the juice of hope to share. That is a salient question. Thank you for that. Moving towards my last point of inquiry, I can't believe it. We will have time for questions, y'all. I'm just looking at I have a watch on. Theater. We talked a lot about being brought into leadership roles because there was no one else to do it. The ship was sinking. I have to save the day, seize the day to save the day. I want to talk about intentionality and how we are intentionally creating spaces, opportunities to change the face of executive leadership in the arts. We could sit here and talk for the rest of the afternoon, anecdotally. And we would be remiss if we didn't address the how we are committed and committing to holding and creating space for more folks like us to show up without having to maybe endure all of the barriers and challenges that we have. Not that there won't be any, there will be. But maybe we can intentionally create space that is without some of those barriers that we've endured because we have positional power now. I turn to the panel.
How do we create space?
How?
Well, I try to make myself available as much as possible. And someone I know recently said to me, I know you never say no. And I thought, ooh. But you email me, I respond. You ask me to show up, I'll show up. You ask me for a recommendation, I'll give you one. I make myself available.
Ask for your terrorist to do a reception.
Ask for our terrorist to do a reception.
Not that happened or anything. just an example.
Well, but let's use that as an example, right? Because
go right ahead. Yep.
apparently maybe that opening wasn't available before. So I created an opening, and I try to create openings for young people, for Black people, for women. I try to create openings because I think I'm accessible. And even sometimes when I struggle with whether it's the right thing to do, whether being accessible is the right thing for me, but I try to make myself accessible anyway. And so, I mean, I feel like that's the best answer I can give.
I can co-sign that for Tracy Lester, absolutely.
I think that's a huge piece of it. I think I have been saying for a long time that I'm really bad at job descriptions, like writing them, reading them, responding to them. People in the room know what I'm talking about. And it just occurred to me really at this moment that it's completely inauthentic to me, the job description. It never tells the story that I want, and when I'm looking for somebody, it never, I think about even the job description of, what I, in the role that I'm currently in, which has changed multiple times because I've changed it to be like, this is actually me. But, a lot of these executive leadership positions don't actually require leadership skills. Like, they don't actually require you to know how to run a meeting, know how to collaborate, know how to listen, know how to show up, know how to compromise, know how to, we're in that model of be decisive, make shit happen, don't listen, be singular. And so I find myself looking at job descriptions for people, my colleagues, for people I wanna hire, and it just doesn't speak to me. So in this moment, I'm like, throw away the job descriptions. Like, let's start over in how we want to think about the values, the qualities of the people that we want to make space for. And that includes artists, right? Not just the type of art that's going to meet this audience. We have these categories of high art, low art, community. It's kind of throwing away those ideas and thinking more instinctively, what is it you're really looking for in these roles? Like, somebody to shift the air in the room when they walk in, somebody to calm things down when you need it. And somebody who really understands databases and can, yeah, there you go. Somebody, thinking about those qualities, but thinking about it differently, and who do you want to invite in to the space that you're making? Because I think we're all very intentional at that space making and can do that and can provide. But for me, I haven't undone some of the structures that haven't really been working for me. And I've been telling myself, it's my bad, I'm not good at that. As opposed to like, that's not working for me. It doesn't work for me to do it in that way, right? So I think that's part of it, is really looking at it different. And I think about executive function, not what school did you go to, what have you done, how many years have you done this, what other institution did you just come from, but more of what are the universal things you need to do to lead in an institution that needs leadership. Like, that should be a part of it, not degree requirements or knows Excel. Although that's very important. But anyways, that's a revelation I'm having right here on this panel, Toya. Thank you very much.
Come on. No degree requirements, but Excel.
Excel and Excel.
We can only change the world one step at a time. Okay?
Just having conversations with folks. On my staff, specifically women of color, the same question that was asked of me: where do you see yourself? And positioning myself and being available to coach, mentor, cheerleader, like, who do you need me to be? I'm asking that question up front, right? Do you need me to be a thought partner? What do you need from me? Because I know what's required of you to do your role, but I need to understand what you need of me. So number one, I can make the decision about whether or not I can do that. If I can't, then I'll find you someone else. But I love mentoring. I love talking to people. I think about all of the things that I wish someone would have told me, right, before I accepted the job offer. And I have those types of conversations with, people at the organization, and my daughter, her friends, and now working on a project where I can go into the inner city, like working with NYCHA, to develop a leadership program, right? So that young people can acquire those skills or really understand why executive functioning skills, or SEL, or whatever we want to call it, right? Why those things are important. But for me, it's listening, it's being attentive, it's not allowing people to hide behind the fact that, I'm here to serve. Like, we're doing service work, so I want to serve. And it's like, but let me pull out of you, right? Like, what's your driver? What's your trigger, right? What happens when things don't go your way? How are you managing what's keeping you up at night and waking you up in the morning? So asking those questions. In addition to, can you help me with Excel? Because I'm not really good at that, right? And job descriptions. I just had the entire staff, we're gonna do an audit. We're gonna do it every year. Look at your job description. What did you do? What did you not do? What is not relevant? What do we need to add? Right? And so as we're having these conversations, I believe that our organization's culture is really starting to become reflective of the values that we all have signed up to demonstrate and live, and then also the development for the staff individually and then organizationally as a team. So it's a lot of people work, right? I'm like, I wish someone would have told me, right? Like leadership is really a lot of like emotional labor. This is people work, and I love people. But when I'm thinking about people 9 and 10 and 11 o'clock at night, I'm like, oh my goodness. And so that's what I'm doing. So the mentoring and the coaching is really helping me to leave it there in that moment and then let them take ownership of it, right? After we have that conversation, you have to come back to me. Because otherwise, I'll be up 9 and 10 o'clock at night, like, hey, did you read this book? And hey, check out this article. And that's not sustainable.
I mean, I don't have much to add. I will say that yes to all of that, and that somebody told me one time, if you show up at a nonprofit organization, if you show up the first day, you're an intern. If you show up the second day, you get hired full time. If you show up the third day, you're running a place. And if you show up the fourth day, it's to turn in your resignation because you're like burnt out. And I think what I take my takeaway from that is that I think that all those things are true if you're passionate and curious. Like the nonprofit arts specifically will reward that every single day. However, you have to really figure out what that means for you personally, and what those stakes are for your own life. And so my job as a manager and as somebody mentoring and working with younger people, older people looking to create their world in the nonprofit arts is to kind of keep them between days 3 and 4 and make sure that they are still passionate and aligning what they actually want out of their life with what we are doing. And so we spent, actually our retreat, this last retreat was like, what are your personal values first? Like, what do you hold to be the most true about yourself? And then just recognizing like the times when the organizational values are not those values, those are the times where you don't want to work here anymore. And so how do we try to bring those values into the work that we're doing? Because you just can't separate those things actually. We're not always going to get all those things right, but we can commit to trying to do work that makes you feel good about who you are in your life.
Wow. Let's give it up for this panel. I know folks in the audience are like, what happened to the Q&A? I have questions. I'm sure you do. And guess what? Hey, guess what? You may have an opportunity to ask your questions of these panelists after this panel, which is over now, which is why I'm closing it. We have a reception that is happening. Where is it, Gary? Come on.
Lexington Social. Lexington Social?
At Lexington Social. So here's what. Your burning question. You're going to keep it, hold it in your heart, and you're going to bring it to Lexington Social. And should you happen to see one of us after we've gotten a cocktail, not before because that's rude, after we have a drink, then you may feel free to approach one of us with your question after you see us with something in our hand and not before, because thirsty, because panel, because up here. So we would love for you to join us at Lexington Social. We're going to go there for a happy hour to celebrate this amazing day of learning. Give yourselves a round of applause. Of the Task Force on Equity and Inclusion for planning and executing. Roundtable and the staff of the New York City Arts and Education. And we want to encourage you to take your learnings out to the world. It is up to us to change this world, and today has given us a lot of food for thought, so we're excited about what's to come. All right, see you at Lexington Social. Sorry y'all, don't move. Gary Padmore, everyone.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I should never have a microphone, by the way. I'm Gary. I am Director of Education and Community Engagement at New York Philharmonic, co-chair of the Board of the Roundtable, father to Camille and Elise, husband and partner to Keisha Padmore. There was actually one bio that was missing. I just wanted to quickly read that from the panel. It's Toya Lillard. You said right? All right, cool. Toya Lillard is a theater artist, arts educator, and facilitator living, working in Brooklyn, BK, all day. And by the way, the panel is all Brooklyn, so that's probably why so we'll put Tracy in there too. All right, back to Toya. So before joining S51 Arts, Toya was executive director of Vibe Theater Experience, a dope organization, arts education organization and theater company in Brooklyn, New York. Prior to her role at Vibe, Toya was director of school programs for the New York Philharmonic's Education Department, where she helped develop its nationally recognized school partnership program. Toya is a part-time faculty at the New School, where she teaches collaborative theater practice. Toya serves on the board of the New York City Arts Education Roundtable and co-chairs the task force of equity and inclusion alongside her co-conspirator, Stephen, over here. All right. A lot of love here, Dr. Taj. And is also on the board of Vibe Theater Experience. Toya holds a BA from Vassar College and an MA from New York University's Gallatin School of Individualized Studies. So give Toya a applause. Thank you so much for all that you do. And I want to challenge you all, because what was the title of this day? What was it called? What was it? Reimagining. Oh, y'all awake? What's going on? What was today's panel? What was it? Thank you very much. Again, this is why I should not have a microphone. So anyway, so the question that I pose to you all is, how can we do that moving forward, right? We did this work. We've been having these days of learning for the last, 5-6 years, and every year is a new theme, a new thought, a new idea. So how are we gonna bring this back to our field, to our organizations, to our own individual practice? Toya always says it's about the I. So how will you, how will we bring this work back to and how we hold ourselves accountable to making that a thing for us moving forward, so that our future or even our presence is different, like as of today, right now, right? So again, I want to thank everyone, the board staff, everybody who's involved, the funders, etc. And actually, is Shoba still here? Shoba's here. Okay, cool. So Shoba and is Kati still here? Kati's not here. Okay, so all right, whatever. We still love Kati. So anyway, so I remember, I'm not sure how many years ago now, I was sitting in a panel, it was a workshop with a face-to-face session. It was about, I think it was called In Full Color, and it was talking about diversity in the arts. I remember leaving that panel frustrated and speaking with like Ted and a few other folks saying how this field is trash. Maybe Ted, I probably coached it a little bit. I didn't say it in those words necessarily, but in any case, I did? Oh shoot. Okay. Anyway. So in any case, the work was getting done, right? And me being a millennial, I like to complain a lot. But what I realized though is that we have to get the work done together. And I appreciate people like Shoba who were actually like on the ground doing the work. So the following year after that session was our very first day of learning. And so I want to give props to Shoba for all the work that she did to lay the and also to acknowledge that I guess this is Shoba's last public event as co-chair of the Roundtable board alongside myself. And so we're really honored that Shoba, as was said earlier, we are honored that you were a part of our board as co-chair. It was our benefit that you were here. And I'm really looking forward to Tracy being a co-chair moving forward as well, because again, it's our honor. And so just props to you, Shoba. and also Kati, who's not here, who we still love, is also stepping off the board, and Erica and Kate, who you didn't see here as well, but they were here, and they love you guys, and we love them too. Am I missing anything?
Ted, do you want to say any words?
Ted, you want to say any few words?
Yeah, I do.
Ted, what's everybody? Just like you sorry, we had a long day. I'm sorry that this is going on longer and longer, but I promise there's going to be drinks afterwards and we're going to have fun.
There's cocktails.
Yeah, those cocktails are coming right up. But I did want to take the opportunity to say a few words about Shoba Kavanagh-Cadillo, with whom I was co-chair before Gary was co-chair with her. Frankly, I don't know what induced her to take this job, because it was an organization in flux. I mean, as Gary just intimated, there was a lot of stuff going on that needed addressing, right? And we didn't really have a job description, for what this would be. She had been involved on some roundtable committees for a few years, and she had really impressed Kati, who was my co-chair at the time. So we asked her, and we're really glad she said yes. I know when I took the roundtable co-chair on, it was because David Shukoff, our founding chair, we're going back all these generations to the beginning of the roundtable. It's just a few names still. We're still so early in the history of this movement. But David really needed a successor after he'd been doing it forever. I wouldn't do it alone, so we got Kati to do it with me. And so we kind of created the co-chair model because that's just what it took for people with big jobs, to run something like this. And now that's enshrined in our bylaws. But Shoba was the first one to begin the rotation, right, of co-chairs. When Kati stepped down, then she became my co-chair. And she was a breath of fresh air in so many senses. Definitely generationally, bringing in a younger point of view. But she was also coming not from a cultural organization, but from higher education, which began to imply how much bigger the roundtable could become. I think she was a little dazed at first, coming into the job. Does that sound familiar? But that's because she was bringing a new sensibility that we didn't have yet, and why she had such an impact on the organization. Shoba asks questions, right? She asks questions that she doesn't know the answer to and that none of us can answer right away, but they're the right questions. She asks me questions all the time. Some weeks it was my first email in the morning and my last email in the afternoon. That's because Shoba has a real knack for catching the internal contradiction, and begins to sense where things are heading and questions that, right? Sees the bigger picture, whereas I'm just focused on getting the task done. She's asking me but why? That's her special gift, and that's what made us, I think, maybe good co-chairs for a little while. When Jen DeBella came on as Shoba's co-chair, then those two really redoubtable women began to take the roundtable down this path of professionalism that you're seeing the results of today. I mean, look at the professionals on this stage. That's where we are now. So in their different ways, Jen and Shoba charted our growth, but I really think that Shoba, as the one who arrived first and began this rotation of co-chairs, is the pivotal figure in the development of the roundtable. And so she may think she can finally do something with all the free time she's going to have now. But as she becomes chair emerita, she will now be answering questions from Tracy and from Gary. And she may be answering them with questions of her own. But I'm confident she'll continue to push the roundtable forward, help us become our best selves. Here's to our dear Shoba. Let's all please give Shoba.